Hello and welcome back to me burying my fangs at last. But that cannot be your finest effort. You think you deserve your freedom more than I? Then fight for it, damn you.
How he has changed, that warlock. Grown old and bitter, lo these many years.
Yes!
Plunges into the fire.
Is that what you were looking for? That's what I gave you. Orlek stands, breathing heavily. He looks back on the thin lick of flame that is his smouldering pyre, before returning his attention back to your triumvirate. Oh, you stopped. Come on, Pamitha, I need you back. Need you back, girl.
Banishment.
Ooh, good move. Oof, oof.
Big on, Bolfred.
Ah. Well, everyone's back, so... And they did a piffling amount of damage. We just got to get one more lad in with. Got this, so. Thank you. Oh. Speedy boy. Oof. Come on.
Night wings proved their worth.
Sorry, Orlek.
Their adversaries, they did not. Thus ends the liberation rite. And thus, the scribes have chosen.
Not there, reader darling. Just another night in the downside, no? You look on Pamitha of what you expect should be the last time you see each other. Any moment now the Shimmer Pool shall engulf her. Any moment now she shall return to glory, and join with Volf's Aegis and the Commonwealth to help achieve the plan. Any moment now the cycle of the right shall end, at least until the dawn of a new age. Any moment now.
And thus, the scribes have chosen. And thus, the scribes have chosen.
Oh dear.
And thus, the scribes have chosen.
Something's going wrong.
No. Nightwings. Reader. What have you done?
Don't know, what have we done? Damn, did we already miss our chance? Each prior time upon the fall of Solian, the Shimmer Pool is opened, following the liberation rite, and taken in whichever exile prevailed. But now all is still, and the light of the stars above has all but died. You sense a growing fear that it is already too late, that the Shimmer Pool shall not reveal itself again. Orlek approaches, his head bowed. The Ape Scribes have saved their greatest... Sorry, wrong voice. The Ape Scribes have saved their greatest treachery for last. Then something else catches his notice. Wait. A sudden rush of starlight cascades through the stillness of the summit. The Shimmer Pool has appeared again, different somehow, but open. Pamitha looks upon it, but it does not engulf her, or at least, not yet. It seems I was mistaken then. The Ape Scribes, this is not their greatest treachery, it is their greatest jest. The Shimmer Pool is flung wide open. Seems that all are worthy now of freedom. Orlek strides towards the Shimmer Pool, but... Halt, Orlek. Orlek glances over at the lone minstrel, almost in surprise. The Shimmer Pool has lost most of its strength. You step inside and you shall surely drown. Of that I can assure you. He laughs to himself at this. Then we have all been cheated. No, the Shimmer Pool is revealed, and one of you may still return as planned. But, as for who returns, someone shall have to choose, ere the last light of the stars is extinguished and the rite cease to be. This is the final trial of the scribes. The final trial of the scribes. Then, our confrontation, the liberation rite, it was all meaningless. No, the victor of the confrontation is to be the one to make the choice, among those closest to the scribes, either the anointed or she who anointed them. Then it's sounding rather like I can get out of here, though maybe you can, reader darling. Aye, shall either be you, the reader, or... It shall be either or. Pamitha, please, make your decision quickly, lest it shall be forfeit. I do not know for how much longer the light of the stars shall offer you this gift. Quite the dilemma, but I think I know which way I'm leaning here. Vida, darling, do me a favour now and go, get out of there. Before I go, start having second thoughts. Pamitha wishes to give up her freedom so that you may regain yours. Very well. Vida, madam, the choice which Pamitha made, or rather, the choice which she gave, it is now yours to make instead. This choice, it may keep bouncing back and forth like this? Absurd. It may, until such time as one of you is willing to accept the burden and the outcome of the choice. That is the trial, and I fear that there is little time remaining now. Vida, if you and your companion are too cordial with each other to accept that freedom, either one of you, then I shall gladly take it. Freedom ought to be more than some flirtatious trifle to exchange. Vida, what is your will? He earned his rightful freedom long ago. He deserves justice. Your intention this night was to return to glory, and it shall be done. This is your chance, and Pamitha wished that you should take it. Oh, I don't know. I feel like this is like the only way I'm ever going to get free, but I don't know if I really want to be that free. I doubt I had much life up on the Commonwealth. I'm going to stick with my original. I'm going to stick to my guns and say Pamitha. You are decided. You have chosen Pamitha. She looks at you with some astonishment. Pamitha, madam. Do you accept the reader's choice, or shall you make another? Sure, why not? Thank you, darling. I guess I'll owe you one when we next meet. In this life, or the next. Then it is done. You see a look of genuine surprise flash across Pamitha's face, and then she is gone. You gave a chance of freedom so that Pamitha may yet have hers. May she return in glory.
Godspeed, Pamitha Thane.
Hey. My job was down here. I didn't have much good going for me up there.
No stars remain aloft.
Such as me, Volfred, and Bertrude. The hell of a third wheel.
Is finished. The Commonwealth. What shall become of it? What shall become of us? Nightwings. The opportunity to gain your freedom from the downside. Was it not enough?
Apparently not. Shame about Orelek, but the plan Uber Alice. That night, the exiled Pamitha returned to the Commonwealth. She was to be the last. The stars had faded, and the cycle of the rites had run its course. She found the Commonwealth in great upheaval. Spurred by the efforts of 5 liberated exiles, Volfred Sandover's revolutionary plan had incited the masses. These exiles, and the starless sky, portended the return of the scribes. The people surged into the streets, shoulder to shoulder. Led by the 5 exiles, their voices shook the heavens. The leadership of the Commonwealth panicked. No blood was shed that night, and by dawn, it was over. The leaders of the Commonwealth had cast themselves back into exile or joined in this new cause. Thus, in its 838th year, the Commonwealth had fallen. The new Sarian Union declared its sovereignty the next year. Among the changes its elected leaders ushered in, they vowed never to cast their people into exile, and they abolished the old Commonwealth decree forbidding literacy. Thank God for that. Today we still remember all of this. And we remember the exiles of the downside, whose deeds led to the dawning of our age, whether they returned or not. Okay, was this everyone's? After the cycle of the rites ceased turning, records of what happened to the Black Wagon and the Nightwings became inconclusive and contradictory. Some accounts suggest that the exiles of the Nightwings, who remained in the downside, continued to make use of the Black Wagon as their place of shelter and their means of travel. However, there is no record of what happened to the wagon's contents, such as the Book of Rites or the Beyond the Crystal, said to be haunted by the apparition Sandra the Unseeing. One possibility is that, when the Low Minstrel took his leave, he took the Beyond the Crystal with him, for he was thus obliged. By this line of reasoning, however, the Black Wagon itself should have been taken also. Others remain sceptical that the Beyond the Crystal ever existed, or rather that the visions that it granted were anything other than the result of an active imagination or a fever dream. The bog dwellers of the southern bogs offer still another explanation, for they are familiar with binding enchantments. If there existed such an object, in which Sisters of the Arch had been expelled for more than 800 years, then the enchantment could have expired along with the light of the stars. What this would have meant for Sandra and the Beyonders is difficult to say for certain, other than it may have meant that they were finally released. Nevertheless, the fates of Sandra and the Beyond the Crystal remain unknown. Yet those exiles of the Nightwings who claimed to have seen this apparition all spoke of her with degrees of reverence, or perhaps a little fear. Okay. Tizo. The imp called Tizo was the first of his kind to achieve liberty through the rites. While he was not the only imp trained in the way of the scribes, imps are native to the downside and thus care not for travelling abroad. This made them useful to triumvirates. Yet Teaser had a different calling, and the Nightwings believed that he too could play a key part in Volfred Sandalwood's plan. During the night of the Scribe's return, despite that the people of the Commonwealth demanded new leadership, he stood out to the populace as something of a miracle. They had only heard of downside imps before from legends of Hal the Swallow. Afterwards became something of an icon, representing both the fall of the Commonwealth and the beginning of a new era. He would visit his friend Faye at every opportunity. She was among the few who could consistently interpret what he meant, and they were always close since they first met. Volfred Sandalwood would sometimes send him little gifts all the way from the downside. Despite the insurmountable distance between them, their friendship proved to be more than resilient. Teaser often misses interactions with the reader of the Nightwings. Well, I've got a little thing now. That's me. They quickly built quite a rapport back in the downside, and Teaser would often express wistful gratitude for all his time conducting the rites alongside the Nightwings, who made such sacrifices for him. Other than that, Teaser was diligent about his role as something of a living artifact, and helped interpret for the messenger imps that relayed the news to and from the downside. Despite having gained significant celebrity, he never let it go to his head. Although he did take full advantage of his access to the Saurian Union's fishing industry. Hedwyn, my boy! After his liberation, Hedwyn was instrumental in the events leading to the fall of the Commonwealth, and was vital to the outcome of the plan. The peaceful outcome of the Scribe's return was attributed to several key factors. One of them was the underlying ambition of the plan itself. Another was Hedwyn's visibility among the people in the streets, identified to be a liberated exile who was believed to be Golgathenian reborn. More importantly, however, was that one of the winged harps of the Highwing remnants accompanied him. She was later identified as Fikani Shang. Yay! They found each other. Their bond was symbolic of what was at stake that night, and proved vital to the peace that followed. In all his days as leader in the Saurian Union, Hedwyn often confided in his friend Jadariel. Despite her intense manner, there was no one whom he trusted more in times when circumspection was required. Hedwyn would often think back about a vow he made at the beginning of his quest for freedom. Although he cherished all the friendships he had made, he pledged to help Jadariel, Rookie Greentail, and the reader of the Nightwings that they might all be free together. He had broken that vow, for in the end not all of them were able to return. A terrible guilt over this darkened his mood for a time. However, the others whom he still knew lifted his spirits, much like he had often lifted theirs. All of the Nightwings knew the stakes. While the others who stood with the Nightwings not able to remain in contact thus, Hedwyn thought of each of them often, and so in turn did they oft think of him. He's a good lad. We've got a lot of people to get through here. Dalbert. As the cycle of the rites drew to a close, it grew evident that the chance of freedom from the downside had forever slipped from Dalbert and Alma Oldheart's grasp. Thus, they and the exiles of the Fate returned to Jomier Valley. There they struggled to get by, as the exiles of the downside tend to do. Sometime after the rites had ended, the Oldhearts at last heard the news that the Commonwealth had fallen. This was well after the fact, of course, but it brought old Dalbert great joy. Despite his forthright manner, he had no love for the nation that cast him down, along with his son. Dalbert Oldheart passed peacefully in his sleep before the next new moon. In his final days, he implored his son to take a pilgrimage to the scribes. Alma never shared his father's view of the scribes, but respected his wishes, and so, after a period of mourning, Alma began a new journey. Not a day went by that Alma Oldheart did not think about his father and give thanks to him, and speak to him at morning and at night. With it the stars yet shone, for surely Dalbert's would be there among them, smiling down at his son and watching over him and his kin. Ah, that's quite nice. Oh, bloody angry Lendl. After the final light, Lendl refused to believe that the rites had truly ended. He would sit through night after consecutive night, staring into the blackness of the sky, awaiting any kind of sign that he might gain another chance at freedom. No such sign ever came. His fellow accusers started to express concern for him. Survival had become their top priority once liberty had slipped from their grasp. But Lendl dismissed them as weak fools. He insisted, rather forcefully, that any evening now the stars would shine for him again and mark the way towards his inevitable freedom. He was, of course, mistaken. The others in his triumvirate were left with little choice but to abandon him. After that, the exile known as Lendl the Liar was never seen again. However, there have been sightings of a bedraggled demon who wanders the downside and bears Lendl's crude countenance, suggesting he yet lives. Okay, that's a bit brutal. Sir Gilman! The Worm Knight, Sir Gilman, had elected to go into exile as penance for his failure to uphold his military obligations to the Commonwealth. To him, earning back his freedom was tantamount to erasing the shame of his past. His honour was at stake, more so than anything. Yet when it became clear to him that he would not go free again through the rites, he readily accepted the outcome, for he knew by then that much more was on the line. He regretted not having a chance to contribute directly to the events that transpired in the Commonwealth, though he was pleased to hear the outcome. The conclusion of the rites and the fall of the Commonwealth made clear to him that his days as a knight had ended. He declared to all those in earshot that he would never fight again. Unless, of course, there arose some extraordinary set of circumstance, again requiring him to fight, but he certainly hoped not. He still trained regularly, though never found as skilled and motivating a partner as his fleet-footed friend Rookie Greentail, who he remembered fondly. From time to time, he would seek guidance from one of his former comrades, Big Bertrude, much his elder, and a wellspring perspective on his life decisions. He was always grateful for the counsel of the reader, and regale her over and over about the time they squashed the spawn of the unfathomed plurns, and wasted no time dwelling on his days under the leadership of Sir Deluge, his former commander. The other Worm Knights stayed well clear of him. Gilman never did return to his homeland of the Sea Dominion and was content to lead a monastic life on a small residence in the hills. It was just high up enough to make him keep striving to conquer his fear of heights. Other than that, an intense daily training regimen and the occasional visit from an old companion was more than enough to keep him optimistic and engaged. He knew by then that honour was not something to be won, but a contract with oneself to be renewed each day. Good lad. What about the fucking little whiny bitch? And all his life, Sir Deluge had fled from one danger only to find himself facing another. He had escaped the war-torn waters of the Sea Dominion, he had escaped the blood border of the Commonwealth, and now he had escaped the rites. After the rites had ended, many exiles wrapped up in the ancient test were crestfallen, as their chances to return to their homes vanished, along with the stars above. But Deluge did not mind, for this outcome meant that, at last, there was no burden or responsibility weighing down on him. Having heard that Sir Gilman had also remained behind, Deluge made a point of avoiding him at all costs. Nevertheless, they ran into each other once, riding a cold current in the Sea of Solace. The meeting was terse and cordial. Deluge ended up apologising profusely for his mistreating of his fellow Worm Knight, and that was the end of it. While most of his fellow exiles of the Pyre hearts yet longed for the waters of the Sea Dominion, driven as ever by the impulses towards conflict, Deluge settled down. Nice. With him remained one of his companions, Lady Seagrass, who had taken a liking to him for some reason. Reportedly, it disappeared into the waters of the Worm Gulf, which may begin to explain the significant increase in worm population observed in the vicinity. Ew. Ew, I didn't want to hear that. Udmild. After the cycle of the rites had ceased, which Udmild returned to the Flagging Hands region, where she sealed herself within the Pit of Millith. There, even her fellow exiles of the Withdrawn allegedly grew unnerved after a time, and left her to her vile work. Sometime later, the Pit of Millith erupted into flame. So intense was the conflagration that it could be seen all the way from Jomia Valley. Arson was suspected, though the cause was never verified, and many bog dwellers in the region were forced to flee. A tempest blowing from the north finally quenched the flames. When at last the ashes settled, and the grounds are cooled, the site of the fire was scarred beyond recognition, no trace of which Udmild could be found. As for the contents of the Pit of Millith, which notably included the profane object thought to be the remains of Islak, all of it was gone as well. Back in the Saurian Union, Udmild's repeated threats to the return of Islak were thoroughly investigated, and no credence was found to any of her claims. What a shocker. Faye. The Commonwealth never provided a sense of home for the one they called Faye the Fair, so she was surprised on her return that she was so well treated. She felt uneasy about it, and besides, she knew that it would do her best to fulfill the pledge she had made to her friends. Even she could not expected the impact that she would have on the events that followed, which gave rise to our Saurian Union. Despite not fitting the image of any of the 8 scribes, Faye nonetheless stood out alongside the others amid the teeming masses on the night of the scribes' return. She spoke of the scribes with such conviction and sincerity that the crowd was very moved. After the fall of the Commonwealth, there was a renewed interest in the legend of the 8 scribes, and many new interpretations of their histories and teachings. Faye found herself at the centre of all of this. Her way of speaking continued to compel a growing audience. She swayed many people from their astralist beliefs. Soon the 8th word... What was the 8th word? Theocratic sect believing the 8 scribes are more than mortal, which had lost favour with the people during the reign of the Commonwealth, sought her out and asked her formally to join, and she did, right away. Among her friends, she always remained close with Tizo, who more so than anyone could always make her laugh. She cited her relationship with Chidari as the single most important in her life. Chidari would always provide for her a circumspect perspective and the wisdom of experience. Faye always was devoted to her faith, but more so to her friends. Many people in the Saurian Union cited that her general manner and unwavering conviction helped them brave the changing times with courage and with grace. Awesome. Rookie. After Rookie Greentail earned back his freedom, he returned to a lavish welcome ceremony in the Commonwealth, as was the tendency for liberated exiles. It was everything he could have hoped for, and soon he was well off, surrounded by luxury and choosing between various exciting opportunities. However, he must have given in to his better judgment, as he did end up siding with Volfrid Sandowar's revolutionary forces as he promised. On the night the scribes returned, Greentail was there with the others, inspiring the masses. He never looked prouder, the very image of Jomia Many-Mane himself. When dawn finally came, it became clear that the Commonwealth that everyone knew would be no more. He realised many new opportunities awaited. He began quite a lucrative career for himself, manufacturing and selling replica merchandise inside by the downside. His main struggle was to meet demand. An aspect of his conscience cautioned him against making light of such a thing, but the money was too good, and soon his family was as well off as he always said. One of his orders of business was to seek out one of his old companions, Pamitha Tane, to whom he took a liking during their quest for Thedum. They bonded further over love of drink, and supported one another through uncertain times that lay in store. Greentail always did his best to keep in touch with all of his many friends, and knew that he owed his fortunes to them. He made a special point of staying close with the group of friends he came to know so well during his time with the Nightwings, wherever they were. They shared a special understanding that put even Greentail at a loss for words sometimes. Barker Ashbores never had much interest in returning to the Commonwealth, for he'd always found its bylaws to be stifling, so when the rites ended, he did not care at first. He soon grew very bored. The rites had given his life a certain sense of structure he'd always needed. He missed the raw anticipation of it all. He decided to continue conducting the rites for the thrill of it. He bent some of the rules and replaced some of the objects, but it was close enough. His pack mates at distance proved more than happy to participate, and thus they ran against each other back in Jomir Valley. Gradually, other exiles familiar with the rites, as well as those that had not heard of it at all, started to take an interest. They ended up giving Barker Ashbourne some healthy competition. His old feud with Rookie Greentail ceased meaning anything to him, and he forgot all about it amid his new pursuits. Ultimately, even Barker, who had led such a directionless experience at that point, found something of a calling through the rites. Whether he took the rites less seriously than any other exile at his time, or more, was oft debated by those who watched him work. I don't know, he didn't seem to take it that seriously. Having a moment there. I guess we'll go with Tamitha. As soon as possible after Tamitha Thane earned back her liberty, she rejoined her sisters of the Hybern Remnants in the mountains north of the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth believed that someone such as she could be rehabilitated through years spent in exile. Instead, her hatred for her ancient enemies only intensified. On the night of the scribe's return, the Hybern Remnants were poised to strike the Commonwealth in a decisive blow. They had recovered credible intelligence about the expected positions of the Commonwealth leadership and of specific weaknesses in the blood border defences anticipated that night. After a surgical procedure, Tamitha could fly again, almost as well as prior to her exile. She insisted on spearheading the attack with a squadron of the Harp's finest. However, just as Tamitha's squadron prepared to clash down upon its foes, she received a signal to belay the attack order and return to the mountains. It appeared that the people of the Commonwealth were on the verge of achieving what the Hybern Remnants were never able to accomplish. Ever dutiful, Tamitha obliged. A sense of duty took priority above all else. Soon after the fall of the Commonwealth, she attended a debriefing in which her blood sister Pamitha was also in attendance. Tamitha was very sceptical that Pamitha could have played a beneficial role in the preceding events and lashed out at her. Pamitha made no attempt to elude the attack and was struck full on. This cost Pamitha the use of her right wing, yet after she recovered, she shrugged the incident aside and said maybe they would call it even now. From that point on, the blood sisters kept a formal distance but were cordial with each other. After the rise of the Saurian Union, Tamitha Thane continued to serve as a flight tactician and remained respected and feared, even among her kind. However, without a war to wage, she grew even more distant than usual. Those closest to her surmised that her inability to reconcile with her blood sister was at the heart of this, though for her part, Tamitha never once admitted to any such weakness. What a shocker. Let's go Jadariel. After her liberation, Jadariel soon became an icon in the movement that led to the collapse of the Commonwealth and the rise of the Saurian Union. Her horns and stern countenance inspired the people to believe that she was Solly and Myr reborn. She became a great, if reluctant, leader. In the uncertain times that followed, Jadariel's seasoned expertise often came into play both in matters of security and of state. For instance, she conscripted and trained a team of volunteers in public safety. The community did not know what to make of such a cordial bunch at first, but soon became to value their service. They have stood for the people ever since, and we celebrate their founding day each year. She remained close with Hedwyn all through this experience, and they supported each other through their struggles many, many times. She kept an eye on Faye, who nonetheless demonstrated a surprising knack to get by on her own, though Jadariel was always willing to provide assistance just in case. She never settled down with anyone, although from time to time she thought about Ignarius, despite herself. She continued training on her own, a regimen that grew stricter with each passing year. There were those who sought to train with her, and she sometimes obliged. There remained one constant in her life. She would always remember her days among the Nightwings, and with fondness, for the most part. Awesome. Several exiles of the Nightwings cared more for the plan of Sandalwood than to return home from the downside. The crone, called Big Birchwood, was a prime example. She had found a suitable environment to live within the dismal region known as Flagging Hands. There she built up a place of thriving business known to many exiles in the land. With the rites having ended, she returned to her preoccupations, working away almost as though nothing had happened. When one gets to be more than 400 years of age, perhaps then even the monumental events such as the culmination of the rites or the collapse of the Commonwealth are seen as trifling matters. Much of her effort was doubtless due to the influence of Sandalwood, someone whom she had admired now for decades. He had made clear that she could not requite her feelings for him, but what could have been a hurtful dismissal led only to a deeper understanding between them. By and large, Birch would get focused on her work, whether casting small enchantments or imbuing talismans. The work brought her a sense of purpose, she would say. In the Commonwealth, such services were strictly forbidden, but in the downside there was a real need for simple luxuries, which the competing slug market could not always provide. Lastly, Big Birchwood continued to live up to her name, and the tales of her days with the Nightwings made her that much more the living legend. Pamitha. After regaining her freedom, Pamitha Thane found herself in a difficult position. Having once betrayed her people of the Hybern Remnants, she knew she would not be welcome in her native home. She did not trust the Commonwealth either. Instead, she found her place among Volfred Sandalwood's agents, who were busy doing their part to fulfill the plan. As it turned out, the plan was a success. Pamitha Thane stood shoulder to shoulder with the other former fellow exiles, and thus they were a sight to behold. A disturbing rumour spread later that night that the Hybern Remnants were slated to mount an assault, which for some reason never came to pass. Pamitha denied any knowledge or involvement. Afterward, Pamitha played an active part in negotiating terms between the Hybern Remnants and the new nation that would become our Saurian Union. Her previous attempt at something of the sort led to her exile. She must have felt some satisfaction to succeed this time around. Sometime later, Panther had an unexpected run-in with rookie Greentail, whom she had spent a fair amount of time with while travelling with the Nightwings. Under these new set of circumstances, it turned out the two had more to talk about, and rather more in common. They would often put to test which one was able to outdrink the other. It is unclear as to which of them prevailed in that contest in the end. One day, Panther received an invitation to return to the Highwing Remnants, where she was to be fully pardoned. That was where she ran into her blood sister Tamitha for the first time since their exile. Their reunion was not as amicable as Panther might have hoped, and Tamitha, still resentful of their history together, turned violent. Panther would later brush aside that incident, though it always had an injury to show for it. Yet from that point on, the Blood Sisters were back on speaking terms, at least for the most part. Later, when asked, she admitted that she felt as though she had no home to call her own. This was during an interview conducted amid an extensive trip abroad, for she had travelled thousands of leagues beyond the bounds of the Saurian Union. Panther continued to journey thus, citing that a reminder of when she was younger and could fly unfettered. Come on then, Manly. When Manly Tinnerstalf realised the rites had ended and that he could no longer return to the Commonwealth through this ancient means, he was outraged. He cursed the scribes, spewing forth such a slew of blasphemy as to be very unbecoming of one of his high status and bearing. When at last he calmed himself, he focused all his energies on attempting to find another means of homecoming. He maintained regular contact with his wealthy family on the other side via messenger imp, and used their vast resources to explore other means of escape. He tried using an elaborate pulley system. He attempted a retrofit, a flying black wagon with superior propulsion. He tried an imp raft, a hot air balloon, even prayer. Nothing worked. There was only one way to escape the downside, and now it was gone. Tinnerstalf bankrupted his family in these vain attempts. At last, such was his shame that he retreated to the teeming woods of the Black Basin to Cinderroot. There he yet wallows, complaining to his comrades of the chastity who still put up with him, either about his own misfortune or the latest news from the other side. Ignarius? Once it became clear to Ignarius that the rites were drawing to a close, he knew that it was time for him and the Tempers to call it quits. But first he and the Tempers decided to celebrate, and that they did for many, many nights. Their revelry did eventually subside, the exiles parted amicably and went their separate ways. He roamed the downside then, searching for some meaning in his life, sometimes taking odd jobs requiring his brute strength. He never remained alone for very long, and took on many lovers in his time. However, he sometimes thought about the one he called Curly Horns and what became of her. Though his glory days as the most powerful conductor of the rites had long since passed, he always enjoyed the fearsome reputation he had cultivated at that time. Let's go Aurelek and then Volfred and Ron. After the Shimmerpool closed for what would be the last time, Aurelek looked around him in the flickering light of the Nightwing's still burning pyre. He then turned to the Fall of Solium and looked up towards the black, starless sky. He cursed the 8 scribes then, one after the other. After that he strode forward towards the waters coursing from the side of Mount Aladale, and without hesitating he cast himself down. Aurelek's body was never recovered. The drop from Mount Aladale does not appear survivable, though Aurelek did survive it once. At that time, he was filled with fury. Such was the betrayal he had suffered when his fellow exile claimed his rightful freedom. This time Aurelek was filled with nothingness, and chose to leave the downside in the one way he still knew he could. The other Nightwings who were witness to this never forgot what they saw. Brutal. When the cycle of the rites ceased turning, Volfred Sandalwood turned towards the starless sky and closed his eyes and prayed. Is all that he could do at the stage of this plan. He aspired to assemble with liberated exiles representing each of the 8 largest ethnic groups composing the population of the Commonwealth. They would stand together as a vision of the 8 scribes returned, inspiring the masses to embrace an older set of values from before the Commonwealth had tightened its grip. With the rites ending sooner than expected, the ideal scenario became impossible. Sandalwood's own freedom, for instance, was now forfeit, yet the plan did have contingencies. Fortunately, most of these contingencies did not prove necessary. Word reached him that, on the night the scribes returned, his fellow liberated Nightwings stood together, and their voices echoed through the streets. Those former exiles who ought to have disappeared into the ranks of the Commonwealth's own leadership now stood united with its people, who poured from their homes in solidarity. It was imperative to Sandalwood that his standing as a Commonwealth be peaceful in its nature. An overwhelming show of popular support would be more than enough. Ensuring this was his priority, and in the end, the result was self-evident. The plan's goal had been achieved. Sandalwood kept busy after that, as much as possible, providing counsel from afar to those who would be at the forefront of the birth of the Saurian Union. Of course, being stranded in the downside meant there was only so much he could do. Resting assured that the future of the nation was in capable hands, he turned his attention to the remaining exiles of the downside. They might never return to that new nation, but at least they could experience his triumph in its struggles in some vicarious way, so he took to his old work, writing and printing. As literacy began to spread again through the Saurian Union, so too did the exiles of the downside take to it. For his part, Sandalwood helped to teach as many as he could. More than that, he provided the material to read, a semi-annual report about the latest events both in the Saurian Union and the downside. This periodical gave many exiles something to look forward to. He welcomed the company of the reader of the Nightwings at every opportunity, and counted her a trusted friend and a keen editor. As Volfred Sandalwood gained more fame throughout this land for all his sacrifices and his contributions, it is said that he remained steadfast about 2 things. The first was that the cause itself ought to remain in focus, the freedom that the people achieve. It was a gift to be cherished, a set of values that need to be nurtured. The second point he made is that he himself had little to do with the outcome. He would often praise the exiles of the Nightwings who had stood with him, each in turn by name. He never forgot any of them. One day, to commemorate his birthday, the people of the Saurian Union unveiled a monument depicting him and the Nightwings as imagined in their prime. While Sandalwood did not learn of it till much later, it is said he was moved to tears then by the gesture. It is since ensured that those of us with memories more fallible than that of Sandalwood likewise remember the achievements of his fellow former exiles and our cause. Alright, Ron. With the rights drawn to a close, the Sigmark's revenues fell precipitously, and Falcon Ron was forced to liquidate his assets and close up shop. Yet it is sometimes the case with those on entrepreneurial leaning, this time of hardship led to epiphany, or at least a sudden change of fortune. One day Falcon Ron had run in with a messenger imp bearing news from the other side. Ron gave it to one of his remaining trinkets which could not be sold. The following week the messenger imp returned to him bearing a tidy sum of wealth in newly minted coinage from the Saurian Union. Falcon Ron cut a long-term deal with the messenger imp then and there. Though his trade remained a grey area from a legal standpoint, the newfound fame of the downside caused Falcon Ron's goods to explode in popularity. He later signed an elaborate agreement with Big Bertrude's and found a distribution partner on the other side through Rookie Greentail, whose own business had expanded. Especially in the Saurian Union, Falcon Ron's goods are still known for their superior quality, though he assumes no liability for any side effects. After the cycle of rights ceased turning, the Lone Minstrel bade the remaining Nightwings take the Black Wagon and seek their fortunes elsewhere in the downside. Their parting was heartfelt but brief. He remained there at the summit of Mount Adair with Celeste, where the two of them would chronicle the final outcome of the cycle. Neither Tariq nor Celeste were ever seen again. We know all this now through a song attributed to them. Some claim these songs originated in the taverns of the Saurian Union, and many were imbued with the weight of folklore. However, exiles liberated from the downside corroborated with each other's claims at having met this duo that presided over the liberation rites. Another folktale suggests these minstrels were heralds of the scribes. Having fulfilled their obligations, they departed the world we know and rejoined their patrons. One of their famous songs describes another, simpler outcome. The two gave up their duties to the rites in favour of a life they could share together. In any case, they are likely to remain the subject for such verses and such songs, for it was they who watched over their rites and ushered in our times. There is one more account which warrants mention. The Nightwings conducted rites under the guidance of a reader. Little is known of her. However, some accounts of her begin to paint a picture. We know she was common birth, weak-framed, though raised with a penchant for learning. The journey to the downside left her close to death. It was then that the Nightwings found her. They brought her from the brink. She showed them the path. She pressed onward with the others. She made a vow to help her friends be free. Thus did the cycle of the rites commence its final turns. When the final rite arrived, the reader's freedom was at stake. In the end, however, she remained in exile. From that point on, accounts of her diverge. It is said the voice which troubled her she never heard again. Some say she opted for a place to settle in the downside, though whether that is true, only she knows. Someday perhaps that reader's own star shall emerge. Then it shall pierce the dark of night in all its brilliant glory. Till such time and ever after, all of us give thanks.
Their journey began on a barren waste where the reader arrived, afraid and alone. When she arrived, the book of rites awakened the Nightwings and ignited the flame. They follow the stars, bound together, strands in our brain till the end. We sing of the last of the Nightwings who, having broken the cycle, shall live on in song. Headwind prevailed and strode the path that his heart laid before him. He has found his way home. Captain Joe Dariel, mother to many a foundling, she has found her way home. Rookie Greentail has proved his worth and returned returned to his family by the grace of the scribes. They follow the stars, bound together, strands in a braid till the end. The moon-touched girl hears the scribes in the world all around her. They have guided her home. Tizo prevailed, first of his lowly kind, to ascend from the downside. He has found a new home. Sir Gilman the Bold, duty bound to honor the Nightwings, he remains till the end. Hermit the Thane, having pleased the scribe, seeking only forgiveness, she has found her way home. They follow the stars, bound together, strands in a braid till the end. Bound together, spirits tether, strands unbroken, scribes awoken.
The great mastermind, Wolfred Sandalwood, saw his plans turn to action. He remained till the end. The bog dweller Bertrude kept their foes at bay with her finest enchantments. She remained till the end. The reader at last made the Nightwings whole, having bound them together. She remained till the end. They follow the stars, bound together, strands in a braid till the end. They follow the stars, bound together, strands in a braid till the end. Now at the end, as we bid farewell and return to the stars, we shall find our way home. We shall find our way home. We shall find our way home.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt that, but my god, what an ending. So, I'm going to review this game, so I'll say everything I've got to say then, because I've got a lot to say about this game, but I will just say, this is by far and away one of the most beautiful games I think I've ever played. The only real problems I have with it, I don't think the rights kind of sync up very well. They felt like a bit of an odd addition to the other visual novel style stuff, but my god, it is pretty. And I think I've just run out of disk space. So apologies for the cutting off before it comes up with the end. But I managed to get the song in there, and that's all I care about, because fucking hell, that's great. as always, thank you so much for watching. This is a long series and I've loved it and it's finally come to an end. So yes, thank you so much for watching. Please do check out the other Supergiant Games that I've played. I'll put a link down in the description for you. And if you do, I shall see you there. So thank you so much for watching. And if you like my content, please do check out my other videos. If you do, I shall see you there. Goodbye.